Madam President, please accept my warmest congratulations on your election at this historic 80th anniversary of the United Nations. Your election underscores the vital importance of including women in the decision-making process. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, in 1945, the end of the Second World War was greeted with celebrations, and hopes were placed in a new era of peace and cooperation, embodied by the creation of the United Nations. However, those hopes were soon overshadowed by the onset of the Cold War. When it ended in 1991, we once again dared to believe that this would pave the way to the vision of lasting peace, security and cooperation as enshrined in the UN Charter. Sadly, that vision has not materialized. In fact, the situation has worsened, and here is why. Firstly, the Security Council, envisioned as the very pillar of collective security, is failing to meet the expectations of the world, if it ever has. The Permanent Five were supposed to be role models for the rest of the world working for peace. Some work in their own interests instead. Secondly, the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals is faltering. Progress is lagging, and with cuts in development assistance, millions of the world's poorest are pushed further away from the access to even the most basic services. Thirdly, international law appears to stand at the precipice of irrelevance. The independence of elected international judges, the integrity of human rights institutions, personal security of human rights defenders, and the authority of this organization are under siege. Fourthly, the Genocide Convention risks becoming a relic of the past. Some states have put the International Criminal Court to its greatest challenge ever. Its prosecutors, whose only duty is the pursuit of justice, and its judges, whose responsibility is to uphold the law, our international law, now face sanctions and intimidation. As if the states that sanction them would prefer to shield the alleged perpetrators of atrocities rather than confront the truth and help deliver justice. Fifthly, the landmark opinion of the International Court of Justice affirming that international law obliges states to prevent harming the climate already feels obsolete. And finally, states are withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement, from the Ottawa Treaty, and from the UN agencies, or simply cutting their finances. Each such act chips away at the support for multilateralism, a system designed not for the powerful few, but for the benefit of all of us. Madam President, how are we to explain these trends to our electorates, to our people, and above all, to our children? Shall we tell them that this is the new normal, that might makes right? That the strong may seize what they want, because they can. That they can kill with impunity, because they can. That they may pollute, wage wars, and trample on international law, just because they can. Are we prepared to look our children in the eyes and say, "This is the world you will inherit, and there is nothing we can do about it"? With the adoption of the Pact for the Future last year, we have charted a path toward a stronger, more forward-looking United Nations. But we must now create the conditions to fulfill our commitments. One way forward is to establish a permanent advocacy network to give the Pact unconditional, sustained political support. To this end, I propose the creation of a global forum for the future, an inclusive movement of states committed to multilateralism, mutual respect, and the defense of our shared vision. a movement determined to stand up for the pact and drive its implementation at every level. As states consider how to implement the pact for the future, some solutions may be seen as inconvenient today, but in the long run, ladies and gentlemen, they are not optional. They are systemically necessary. The first example is the reform of the Security Council. We all recognize that it is the principal organ entrusted with the maintenance of international peace and security. But what it is not, and must never be, is a body that stands above international law to defend the interests of some at the expense of others. Jus cogens norms must be safeguarded as a matter of principle. If the prohibitions against genocide and crimes against humanity are accepted as jus cogens norms, can any permanent member claim a legitimate veto right in such circumstances? Member states have attempted to address this question through many reform proposals, but with minimal progress. This is why we must dare to go further now. We, the General Assembly, must take a bold step and request an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on this very question. Second, we must confront the gap between our words and actions on gender equity. Progress has been made, but far too modestly. Over the past 80 years, 13% of leaders in multilateral organizations have been women. And no woman has ever served as Secretary General of the United Nations. And this, ladies and gentlemen, must change. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us make history. Today, the 80th session of the General Assembly is led by only the 5th woman to hold the presidency. By the end of this session, she would be joined by a Madam Secretary General-elect, a living proof to 4 billion women that even the most impossible job is not beyond their reach. But gender representation is not enough. What we must achieve is actual gender equity because it benefits not only women and girls, but entire societies. True equity requires systemic change, and so women's empowerment must remain at the heart of our global agenda. International organizations must wave a gender perspective